And I completely agree. Sometimes the small meetings end up being the best ones because we can just talk. You know, I'm imagining that many of you are educators. I'm thinking maybe most of you are teachers. So I'm Stephanie Launstein, and welcome. I'm currently the Director of Education and Community Engagement at a East Bay organization called Scientific Adventures for Girls. And we offer informal STEM education to specifically girls at the elementary level. But I am an educator of 10 years. I've taught outside of the US and in Germany and Switzerland. And I've been a science teacher and an ESL teacher. So it's, you know, a profession that I really, really love. And I'm thrilled that you made the time, because I know the end of the school year is hard on everyone. This year in particular has been so difficult and so challenging, and so in a way unrewarding, because many of you had to give up your favorite routines and had to revamp your lessons all last minute. And so I really, really take that as a gift that you came today. So thank you. And in return, I would like to make this workshop interactive and very time effective. And so it's probably not going to be an hour and a half. I have a lot of resources for you that you can use. In fact, I'd like to introduce you to the agenda. So again, how we Zoom today, before I do the agenda, it'd be awesome if you could choose to have your video on or off. It's your Saturday morning. That is your choice. But it would be super helpful to know your name, and then maybe the main grade level that you teach in your name, Zoom video name area. If you could change that, that'd be great. Yeah, so thank you. And maybe you'll get to that maybe later, and that's fine. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you to share a little bit about you. So for that, I'm going to have to stop sharing myself for just a second, and I will poll you first of all on, let's go to poll 2, kind of like your experiences. So I'm going to launch that poll. It would be awesome to hear back from you. So what am I asking? I would like to know how much time you spend on environmental education in your classroom. And, so the statement is, I spend a lot of time. Do you really disagree with that? Or you're thinking, I need to do more of that? Or do you strongly agree with that because you've been doing it? And maybe that's even a focus area at your school. Then the second question is, have your students participated in a debate? And I imagine many of you may be science teachers, but I will find out. I don't know. The third question is, do your students experience eco fatigue? And just to explain what I mean by that is, it's kind of becoming more of a thing around the younger generations, but maybe also increasingly the older generations, to hear to respond with a fatigue and some type of withdrawal when all the news on climate change are talked about and reported. It doesn't mean that people don't want to hear it, but they lack the ability to manage their emotions around it. And so there's a certain level of withdrawal. And question 4, do you conduct class discussions on science topics? And so those were my questions, because I'd like to know how much experience everyone has. And I see that 3 or 4 people have already voted. So since we're not that many, I really would like for us to get to 4. And I see so far debate hasn't really been a thing, and that's really good to know. Take note of that. Not a lot of eco fatigue in our small sample size, okay. And Discussions. Okay. Tend to be fewer discussions than more discussions. Okay, that's good to know. And all right. And no debate. Okay. I got you. So it looks like the fourth person is maybe struggling, possibly, or I will end the poll and share out the results. So here we go. This is interesting. I thought that they would be tallied. Interestingly, they are not. So I can't see the result really how I had imagined it. Well, I guess no. I guess I will just report on them. So there's a person who strongly disagrees that they spend a lot of time in education, a person who disagrees, and a person who's neutral. So it looks like most of you come here because you want to get into environmental education more, and that's fantastic. You know, that's what professional development is all about. So then you're not really familiar with debates, and only one of the teachers feel like their students suffer from equal fatigue, and only one does a class discussion on science topics. And so thanks for also adjusting your names, and I'm going to stop sharing. So welcome to the fourth person. I'm going to go back to my slides. Welcome. And we're going to get right into it. So we'll maybe just take a moment. I'm not sure. That didn't work. I'm not sure why. I'll just do it over. Yeah, I'm having one of those moments that are my favorite moments. My internet does not want to collaborate, and my students are.
I'll share my screen.
Pretty young. So they have amazing capacities of patience. So that's what I'm going to have to ask. Yeah, if you would like to, Corinne, I think I'm back in business here. But I'm just thinking that it's not letting me. Don't know why. Do you want to share your screen then?
Oh, I thought I had.
Okay. Okay, so I might just not.
There we go.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so today I'm gonna give you basically.
Can you guys see it? I'm not seeing it on my.
Yeah.
Oh,
could you go back to the agenda slide? Thank you. There, perfect. So I'm gonna do a little bit of talking head. And Corinne, if there's comments in the chat, I'd love for you to point them out. That would be awesome. Because I care quite a bit about what you have to say. So what is the lesson? Then what are some good goals for teachers to be cognizant of? What are the lesson goals for your students? I think at that point in time, you will be able to kind of assess where are my students at, which of these goals are interesting to me. They don't all have to apply, but I try to, take a broad brush so that you get a sense for what this lesson can be. We're going to spend some asynchronous time. I will send you the actual lesson plan, and I have a worksheet for you to review. I'm not sure it's going to take 15 minutes. I was just guesstimating. Then we'll come back and do breakouts, and maybe we'll not do breakouts. I'll let you decide that because we're only 4. If we're more at that point, it may make sense. Otherwise, we might just do this as a whole group thing. And talk about how would you make the serious work in your classroom. And that is then sort of like a creative, professional community type of discussion where we talk about the challenges. I will talk about the students that I conducted this lesson with in more detail. And I will share some tips beyond the ones that are on the slides for you to handle classroom management, because it sounds like with really very little experience, there will be there will have to be good routines to make sure that the classrooms feels like it stays in control, yet is student-centered, and to strike a good balance with that. And that's going to be it. And then I think you will walk away with a nice lesson plan that you will receive in Word documents, so you can make modifications to it. And it has some extensions as well. So let's get started. Let's move on to the next slide. So what is it that I'm proposing? So it is a pro-con debate, and it has several stages. It will take a minimum of 3 lessons. And I think in the case of many, for you, it will probably take more because you probably will want to engage your students in simpler debates if you haven't done any yet. And I will talk about some methodology of what those could be in my later slides. And they don't have to obviously relate to environmental science. So if you have a unit on something else, you could start to introduce your students into to these debate types that can be short. They don't have to be longer than 10 or 15 minutes. And if you're a middle school teacher and you or a high school teacher with a kind of like a morning circle or a other type of social emotional learning, you could also introduce it there, right? So there's many opportunities to introduce perspective taking and the basic forms of debate into your day. Back to the environmental education one. So it takes about 3 lessons, and the idea is to find a topic that students will respond to, because it's part of the community they live in, it's a challenge in the community, but it is not a very simple situation. So it has to have some layers, because otherwise the debate will feel probably a little contrived. I will show you some examples. I've taught this also in different states. I've taught it in Minnesota. That's actually where I started teaching this. And the question was, should a Canadian firm be allowed to establish a copper nickel mine near the boundary waters, which is a huge canoe area that covers Minnesota and Canada. And so there were really pros and cons. So it has to be engaging. If it's not really interesting and engaging, the debate won't work. So that's a real important criterion. And local, so that kids feel like they have something to say, that it matters, that they could even take it home and talk to their families about it, and the families would actually care. Oh, you talked about that? Oh, well, let me see. Uncle Jerry is no. Something like that, right? So connections, bringing science back home into the community. That's really a critical feature of this. So the debate question you pose needs to be binary, meaning, are you either against or are you for fill in the blanks? And I'll get to that example that we're going to be looking at today in just a moment. So then you present it, you make it exciting, you make it a little bit spicy, maybe use pictures that outline what the opposing views could be, so that it fuels the imagination and the interest and the engagement of your students. Then you basically put them in groups of debaters. So I've used four basically representatives of interest groups. And I had the kids had them count out 1, 2, 3, 4. So it was pretty random, but you can choose grouping in any way. We can talk more about grouping later. But importantly, they have to be in a heterogeneous group with their opponents or their allies to start out with. That's a little bit of an accountability thing where you scaffold their internet research, but you want them to actually do it. And that is, at least that was my way of making sure that everyone really gets into this and gets and feels informed. Okay, so I'm seeing there's a question. Let's see, let me get to that I'm not seeing, Corinne, could you do me a favor? I'm not able to see the last bit. I just saw it pop up, the last question that was posed.
Yeah, with sharing, mine's in a different spot. So hold on.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just asked him about a binary debate question, but I think I understand it now. So I was when I just read it in the beginning, I wasn't sure what you were asking, but now I get it. I understand.
You know what? I really appreciate that you say that. That's how I was hoping we could do it. I don't usually as a teacher like to be a talking head either. So thank you for that question. I appreciate it, Sophie. Yeah, so they'll be in their group. You will give them time to research. And then the next day they will start to meet other representatives. So you put them in homogeneous groups. And they can use the information that they found on their representative to then share with the others, and together they can start building arguments. So here's another, important decision point for teachers. Have you taught them previously how to tie facts and information to an argument? And okay, here's another question. Should we choose the question? That's an excellent question. I wish I could read. Okay, now I can. Can you give an example of a binary question? Should we choose the question, or can they pose the question? Absolutely, that would even be better. So the sample question that I was going to take you through today is called, are you for or against Chevron expanding their operations in Richmond, California? So it's pretty local. If you're from the area, the East Bay area, you may know about that basically that conflict of having a large employer in an area where that brings also negative side effects of polluting the air and the water in the area. So if you teach a older grade level, and I'm not sure, I can't really see if you do, let me double check. I'm gonna try to read your name, and I can't read the rest of your name, so I don't know if you put the grade levels behind it or not. Sorry about that. Sophie, I think it's it's Catherine. So Catherine's 6th grade. Sorry, I just saw that. Yeah, so if you have 6th graders, thank you, who are interested in raising their own question, I think that's best. That is best because then they basically tell you what they're interested in, and the level is also something, or the question is also something that they probably can manage. That would be best. I wasn't that lucky, so I had to come up with the question, but I also feel that after I taught this lesson a few times, it became a kind of a thing in our middle school, and students were starting to prepare for that, because you can do the debate within just the classroom context, but you can also take it beyond that and invite other classes, for instance, also younger classes, as an audience. So there's a bunch of options for you. Anyway, so they then, in these homogeneous groups, help each other come up with arguments. They do a little bit rah, 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 we're gonna beat them, and that's all good spirit. And then you set up and you make a big fuss of it, a debate room with a debate table, with panels, with little name tents maybe, where you have moderators, you may have timekeepers. Again, you may go as far as inviting other classes. If this could be maybe after you'd gotten a little bit of a practice with that, so that you know what you can advertise. And then I think it's a big deal for students. Some in my classroom dressed up for the occasion. I was really kind of tickled to see that. So that's the overview. Questions about that? Would you unmute yourself and just just like to know if there's some questions, generally speaking, about the concept.
How do you encourage your student to talk during the debate? Usually my kids are pretty quiet.
It's an excellent question. Yes, so a debate only works if your kids are at a point where they are willing to speak in front of others. And if your kids are really quiet, I have a kind of a mini version of this where they basically do the debate in partners. So that you could, instead of having 4 groups, you could bring it down to 2. So, one representative who's likely going to take the pro and one who's likely going to take the con version, position, sorry, and then have them debate with each other. And that would be the place to start so that they become more comfortable. This should be really a comfortable, in only a positive stress type situation for the students. Otherwise, they will think of debate as something horrible. And that would be, I think, quite counterproductive also from a societal standpoint, right? We want them to find their voice. And that would be a method I would suggest. And I have a cross or a hyperlink for how to set that up in the presentation for you. I'll point that out. Thanks for that question. That's an excellent question. Okay, I'd like to move on to the next slide. So here are some debate questions for Northern California. We're gonna go with the blue one, like I said, but I have some other ones too. I love that idea of having students come up with their own. So let's then go to the next slide. So the way I did it is, I basically announced, okay, tomorrow we're going to start a debate, and this was sort of like the opening when they walked into the classroom. I wanted them to see, oh, visually, okay, what is this? I see there's controversy. And many of my students told me when they walked into the classroom and they saw the question, they kind of felt like, yeah, I know how I feel about that. I can answer that question. And really bright students. And then after we had gone through these 3 days, they said, I no longer am so sure. And I thought that might at first seem like that's bad. We're making them insecure. It isn't. To me, it was, and I'd like to know how you feel about it, but I really felt strongly that they had started to get a grasp of the complexity and had found a place in it and felt comfortable to say, I'm no longer that sure. Would you like to comment in any way on that, how that might be different or similar in your school? How would you expect your students to respond if you had a question like that? Would you also think like they would say what my students did?
I agree. I think that I would probably have students that I kind of see it happening 2 ways. I see getting to the point as to what you said, where the kids are like, oh gosh, I'm not so sure anymore. And I also see kids like diving harder and feeling stronger about their position on it too. Did that happen as well? Or did you really see more of the kids feeling not so sure anymore?
No, that's a really great question. I didn't see the harder ones, but I also had classes where that didn't happen and they just stayed where they were. I'm not sure they necessarily became more orthodox about it. That did not happen, but no change also happened. I didn't know what would happen. So, anything is possible really in a debate, but the hope is, and that's, we can't control minds. That's also not our job. We want to just facilitate an environment where they learn critical thinking. The hope is that with a little bit of empathy, they understand that other opponents or other positions are also valid and have to be heard. If a solution is going to stick, there need to be different perspectives taken into account. So, but thanks for that point. I love it. All right, let's go to the next question. So the way, in this particular case, I would divide up the 4 groups is to come up with, like a Chevron manager, an unemployed Richmond resident, an environmentalist, and a public health official. Now, that is up to you. If you feel like, well, we'd do that differently, great, then, totally do it. It's very flexible. Like I said, the format, once you've done it a few times, allows you to plug in all kinds of things. So once you've taught your kids more about how to do a debate, it's very flexible, and it's great maybe at the end of a unit, or great at the end of a school year, or just before winter break, when everyone feels a little exhausted and the teachers now can basically step back because the kids know the process and they can take over more. It actually, once it's taught, is really a little tiny mini holiday. It is, minus the classroom management, but that's always a given, right? So
Stephanie,
go ahead.
sorry. How much time do you allow the student to do research before the debate?
Yeah, that really varied. You know, I had, especially in middle school, I had students that had a huge range of ability. And that's why I felt it was in the end helpful to involve an English teacher and just see if, if we could do a little bit of collaboration on the online research, also with what's good information, how do you discern good websites, so that it wouldn't be too much of an impediment on just my time, because there were kids that really needed extra. And I also consulted with the special ed teachers to help me with that. So that can be a sprawl, but for the most part, after I had explained what this thing is that we were now going to do, and I knew they had a little bit of debate experience in social studies, so I wasn't starting from scratch, I gave them a whole hour. And I walked around and made sure that, everyone felt comfortable with the questions. And of course, not everyone did. And some people felt like, I don't know what to do with this question. And then I had to kind of modify it a little bit. It is definitely a little bit of a learning experience for the teacher too. And that's, to me, authentic, because if we want to prepare them to debate, and the scaffolding that I provided wasn't really helping, then I have to adjust that so that they can still do the debate and represent something that makes sense to them. I hope that answered your question a little bit. But I can't really tell you beyond a day plus, or an hour, same thing to me, is what I budgeted for.
Sophie had a great question about, do you have examples of a more simple debate topics to introduce to students who haven't done it before?
Yeah, let's talk about that. So I think, again, I taught homeroom as well. And so for me, the simplest way of introducing debate was, when the kids came in the morning, I would write a question. It could be anything. It could be, do you prefer Coke or Pepsi? And then we would do a little bit of why in our morning circle. So really, the idea is to get the kids really comfortable with talking about it. And if they're really not comfortable even with things where they're basically the experts about, soda or chips or whatever they eat, and can be healthy, just popped in my mind. Then it's difficult. Then debate really is difficult. Then you may revert to something more in writing and not oral. Again, the idea isn't to make them feel uncomfortable. The idea is for them to feel like they're just at that 80% where they may have to give themselves a little push to get over themselves, but then when they do, they're really actually excited. That's the idea here. But I love that question. So we can maybe also as a group formulate some environmental education questions that are more adequate to you. That's what how will I make it work in my classroom portion is all about. Let's just move on with the introduction, and then we'll get into that. So let's go to the next slide. So just, feel due diligence. What is the pedagogy here? There's a whole list of things, but to me, some are really important. I feel science is often portrayed as something quite narrow. I'm actually by training a molecular biologist. I've also worked in the lab. I have published. And then I became a teacher. So it was really important to me to let my students know that science has a lot of facets, and it is also political, so that they wouldn't think that it's maybe narrow. It isn't. This idea of debate is also germane to scientists. They need to be able to debate and debate objectively and base their arguments on evidence. So that is a science practice, and you'll see that in the NGSS practices. That's the next slide. There you go. Thank you. Practice of engineering and science. So, that's where you start to check off your boxes. That's a big deal. And then also the concepts, systems and systems model. So a system is something that changes when you take one piece away. And in this whole concept of the debate, if you take a position away, it will certainly change the debate. So I chose 4 individuals to make it richer. It doesn't look like any one of you guys would maybe want to start with more, but you could start with less. You could, like I said, make it 2 opponents or 2 opposing representatives. That's certainly an option. And then stability and change. So, the change is in basically what are we seeking here? Where are we going? Are we against or for it? We need to make a decision to regain some stability. Should we have this plant in this particular case or not? And then Earth and human activity. I think those are the disciplinary core ideas. There's a lot of things that you can check off there. All right, so that's a little bit about the objectives. I find that the debates, once practiced, really help enormously with critical and also abstract thinking. Of course, public speaking, the whole citizenship piece, I think also hopefully is well integrated depending on the debate topic that you choose. Researching factual information, something that crosses disciplinary areas. So again, social study teachers, English teachers can be pulled into and can be maybe get excited about this topic. And then also, how do you persuade others, and how can you with empathy put yourself into the place of the other person to anticipate what they may say and then find a rebuttal. Of course, that's a little bit more advanced, but that definitely is in there. And then finally, to me, doesn't seem like you had such trouble with it, but in my classroom, we did quite a bit of environmental education, and I did struggle with eco fatigue in my students. They were starting to feel a little disengaged. I think that's why I came to the debate in the first place. I needed to find some way to re-engage them and to keep it really student-centered and positive. Yeah, so thank you. Well, let's go to the next slide. Some considerations. So we already talked about some topics, but now that maybe you've listened to this, do you want to maybe throw out a topic that popped in your mind and just share something that is local to you that you think would be appropriate? Because I always love to learn from my audience, I'll be honest. Anything that you want to share? I see there's a chat response. I don't know if that's been there for a while or not. I can't click on it.
No new ones.
Okay, no new ones. All right. Then if you feel, okay, if we invest 3 days in something, we should also make some type of, make this sort of, create an assessment for it and assign a grade to it. And that would make sense. In my mind, what has worked well is to come up with a basic rubric and then to engage the students in helping complete it. Or, like I said, if you can collaborate, if you have collaborative peers, see if your social studies or ELA teacher has an existing rubric that you could maybe just take, and hopefully your students would already know them, and maybe make some modifications with your students. Again, it's nice to have buy-in from your students. It's probably something you already know and practice, but I still like to say it for how they're being evaluated. It's also, I find, great for teachers. So I've taught for 10 years and I still sometimes felt like I was way overshooting in my expectations or really undershooting. And when they can help tell you what they think is a fair assessment, it ends up being really helpful for both the teacher and the student. All right, and now let's also get into a question earlier. So if you have students that haven't done a lot of discussions, let alone debates, how could you get them interested in it? So there's these 4 hyperlinks. I don't know if you can click on them right now. Okay, yeah, thank you, perfect. So the 4-corner debate is super simple. Again, pick any discussion topic. You could even pick the one that I suggested with Chevron, provided that your students are aware and would have some opinions. And you could say, now this wouldn't be, you could actually use 2 corners for this one and say, do you feel you're for or against that? And then have them seek a corner and in their group talk about why they think that. You could also divide up your class in 2 groups and then do the 2 corners so that your groups become smaller. And then have a volunteer share out why they thought that. So that would be your first step into some type of debate. And the why is, of course, is important. Now, at that point, your students wouldn't have a lot of evidence. You know, this is at the opinion level. And you would point that out to them and say, okay, that's really important. There's a lot more to know. So eventually we will do a debate where we use our arguments, where we make them stronger with evidence. So that could be then having them anticipate that they will go down that road. There's another, if we can go back to the slides, another link.
I just thought I'd put the link in the chat and then, yeah.
I love that. Yeah, definitely empower the audience for sure. So this one lists actually a number of debate techniques. And if you scroll down, you can see that there is the 4 corners, there's the partner that I mentioned, where you basically have your students go through the whole process of doing web research, and you have them assign themselves a representative role, but you just do it in partners, right? Start small. The other ones may not be that interesting. So technique 3 is really advanced. You're basically asking your student to take a side that they lean towards. Let's say you have a lot of very environmentally enthused kids and they all want to be an environmentalist. That's fine. Then they would develop their arguments around that position, but then you would basically challenge them to be devil's advocate and come up with the reverse. And it also would have to make sense. That's also a great technique. And it wouldn't necessarily include like a debate panel where they would sit at a table and there would be an audience. So that could also be in a small group scenario. And that would maybe be a nice introduction. But again, sort of like, you know, it is more sophisticated to come up with the opposite of what you just said. So from a public speaking perspective, it can be simple. From kind of like a cognitive development perspective, it can be challenging, but it's always worth a try. And, you know, just trying helps kids develop their skills in their brains. Then there's a bunch of others. I'm not necessarily going to go through all of them, but I wanted you to have that resource. So these are some things that you could do.
That's the same one. Okay.
Yeah. And Fishbowl is, I find, actually a great way to get everyone engaged. And Corinne, if you could scroll down, there's a lot of text. I want to spare you, but there's a graphic there. that I think outlines quite well what Fishbowl is all about. So you basically divide up your class in 2 groups, and they will partner up. So you can also count them out, 1, 2, 1, 2. So you'll have students partner up. One student will be an active debater. The other partner will be an observer and will note down all evidence-based argument their partner actually brought up in the debate. And then you will have them switch. So you could do this format with a very simple question. Fishbowl is super cool because it really gives everybody a role. There is no audience in the traditional sense. The note taker has to give feedback to the partner once they're done. So it's really quite nice. You can really step back as a teacher. I love this. I totally love Fishbowl. Okay, so the partners then split up. One partner becomes part of the circle, the inner circle, where the debate is actually happening. And the other partner becomes part of the outer circle, where there's only the observation going on. And so then there's a moderator, a student leader who presents the topic. Whether or not the students had to do a lot of research is up to the teacher. It could also be something that's more heartfelt, that's straight out of the school daily life that they need to debate and already are expert on. And so then they basically have the debate inside, and they have some debate rules. That's also important. What is a good debate? What is okay? What is not okay? And again, the moderator who will call them on it and say, wait, you're just repeating yourself, or wait, you cut off so-and-so, or wait, you didn't use your talking piece. That could be a rule, for instance, so that they actually really have to listen to each other. That is up to you and your teacher practices, but it's a great format. It looks daunting maybe, and again, that's where sometimes it's nice to have another teacher help you teach this, so that you don't have to spend so much time with the skill building so that your students actually get this. Thank you so much. So, so these are some considerations and some tips I shared, I think, already, but here there are again. And again, for students, and I had students that were extremely anxious. Just giving a PowerPoint presentation in front of the class they couldn't do it. So it's really important, again, not to make them feel like they're no longer part of this or they're not valuable. You can give them roles like juror, timekeeper. They don't have to maybe even speak up. They can just hold up a flag when some rule was broken. There's different ways of doing it. And again, I'm always learning myself. This is part of teaching. And then let's just say you are going with the debate that I'm talking about here. On the day of the debate, make it a big deal. This is a picture not of my students. I found it on the internet. So, but it represents quite well what I was doing. Of course, that was all pro-COVID. Now we would have to use many more tables. But same idea, right? They really, so representatives of the 4 parties get to sit there. The other students sit around them. I would just put them on the floor. We had a large room where I set up just tables, and then students were on the floor. The moderators were also sitting at the tables, and kids brought their scripts, their arguments with the facts to the debate. They were either audience members or they were sitting at the table. And as the kids at the table were making their arguments and counter arguments, they were then asked to leave, get up and become audience, so that kids from the audience could step in and take their seat. So it was a little bit of a commotion, but not too bad, actually, not too bad at all, because, and that was maybe why I like it so much, my students really got into it. They really were wanted to have their moment of fame where they were saying that one clever argument that they thought was gonna really break or make the whole thing. And they were feeding off of each other. They really were. They also knew that at the end of the debate, there was going to be a vote. So they felt there was some skin in the game, it mattered. They needed to actually convince the students in front of them, and the students in front of them would give them feedback with their ballot. And I just had yes, no ballots, no names and nothing like that. So I think that's pretty important, to give the students a moment of fame, because they are, if they're not used to this, really putting themselves out there, and to celebrate them, maybe take pictures. If you have a newsletter, put it in the newsletter. Another extension that we did is someone who did not like to talk publicly took notes, and we took the notes, made a poster out of it, made it look nice, and put it out in the hallway, and then put a little box with a slit, and had more students and teachers cast their vote. So that then really felt like, okay, wow, the people actually care, and it became a thing. And that's how basically I was also teaching younger generations of students who would come to my classroom. They would already anticipate, oh, we're going to be doing that, and then we'll have the, so that helped me. It helped me get my students ready for this, if there were, some hesitant. And of course, it also went the other way, right? So some of the students who hated that came to me saying, do I really have to? I don't want to do this. And then at that point, it was important for me to be able to say, hey, you'll do the research, but in the debate itself, you can have this role. That's fine, because we need that person. So if it could be you, that would be great. Okay, I did talk a lot. I'd love to hear from you. So this is the extension that I talked about. So if we go to the next slide, this is how I had envisioned okay, what time is it? Oh my God. So let's not do the whole 15 minutes of review. I think because we're so small, and I would like to keep it to an hour. What I could offer you is, what I will offer you is to send the links to my lesson plan via chat. If you will then click on it, please, I can grant you access. I'm not sure how else to do it. And I also created a worksheet, same thing. And then I'll let you kind of look at this, and we'll have a Q&A. And if you're still interested in the breakout rooms of debating or talking about how you could make it work for your classroom, you let me know, and I will stay on and we'll do that. Does that sound like a good idea? Are we getting some thumbs up for that? All right, thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna have to, I think we're going to stop sharing screens at this point. I will.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Corinne. You're such an amazing supporter. Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to go straight to my, here we go. So this would be the lesson plan. And I will wait, here we go. There it went. And then I have a template worksheet for you. It has all kinds of links to research and research questions that will help the students kind of, if they're not really that experienced in asking their own questions, some are and some aren't, you can use these pre-formulated questions or replace them with others. It also talks a little bit about the rules. So again, modify it to your best purposes. And now I'm going to have to ask Corinne to use your screen so that I can give permission for access to whoever would like to access these two documents from my email box.
Yeah, we're not sharing anymore, so you should be able to just get into your screen.
That's right. You're right. I should. Okay. Okay. I haven't seen any requests come in yet, so let me know.
I just sent to you.
Now. Yeah, got it. Okay. All right. This is just going to take me a tiny little moment here. So bear with me. again, if you have an idea of how I could do this in a slicker way, teach me, please, because
Yeah, if you go to the share button on the upper right of your document,
yeah.
then there's like a down at the bottom, it says share link or something like that. If you click it, you can make anybody who has the link can view.
Okay, so let me see. No, I don't think I quite know where to. Oh, get link. Here we go. Copy link. And
But if you, there's like a little caret or something next to the, what the restrictions are on that for the copy link.
yeah, I made everyone who can view this link an editor. So that should help.
Well, that means they can change it on you. So you
might
may want
have-
to, you may want to change that to just view.
Yeah, you're right. You should make a copy of it. Make a copy of it and then
Exactly, Catherine.
yeah, I like that. Thanks for looking out for me. I appreciate that. Okay, so I'm gonna send you another link. Hopefully that will work better for you guys.
It should be the same one. Yeah.
It is, but it should then give immediate access.
Yeah, so if I refreshed where I had requested access. Oh, but you so far you've done the first one, which was the template for students. And so then you need to do the same thing on the other document.
I do. Okay.
So
Yeah.
this one looks like it's updated, maybe.
Are we getting to where we want to get? I'm also going to continue just to give access on my email box.
Oh yeah, it says, well, for that one, it says anyone with the group with this link can view. That's on the.
Okay. Yeah, it's a little bit of clicking here. I wish I had a better way.
Okay,
of
I will make a copy of this
Thank you.
to my drive.
Because yeah, I just gave people access and not changing it to viewer. So that was a little silly. Yeah, my moment of silly. Okay, here we go. And all of that is recorded. Yay. Okay, I think we're getting a little closer here. So if you
All right, here's a copy of one of them that you shouldn't have to request access to. And that I'll share that out in the
thank you.
when I share resources, I will share these links out.
I have almost given everyone access through my email box. So I think we're getting pretty close to perfection here. Almost there. Last one's Catherine for the lesson plan. Okay, so I did it.
Catherine, yeah, I mean, if you want to use it, you'll still want to make a copy, but the link that I just shared should let anybody in to view it. So you won't be able to edit it, but you can view it.
Yeah.
And then and I will do that for the other one when I get access, which hasn't come yet.
Good. I just made a copy just to be safe that whatever I created, I will be able to keep.
So I still don't have access to the first one you shared.
And that's the lesson plan?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I will give you the viewer, and I'm sending it to your email box right now, just so that. All right. All right. Okay. So, again, I want to give everyone the opportunity to go through the resources and ask some questions. And then I will ask you in 3 minutes whether you would like to have a conversation on how to make the series work in your classroom. And based on your feedback, we will have it or we will not. That's the plan.